A few days ago when I was praying, I had a picture of a Rubik Cube, one that was all mixed up. To be honest, it looked like I was feeling many things on my mind, all mixed up, unclear how to get things sorted out, and contemplating my next move. Perhaps you may be feeling in the same way. Many life issues have been confronting you at the same moment. Family, work, study, health, all those things. They all seem mixed up and muddled. And if I do this here, how will that work over there? And if I do this, when can I do this? It just seems a bit of a mess. Confusion reigns and pressure seems to build. Then God gave me the assurance that just like the Rubik Cube, all the things I was wrestling with were all connected, that there was a way in which they would all come together. He reminded me that He was the fixed point at the center on which everything else hung, and that by walking in faith and obedience, the solution over time would become apparent, even though there would be occasions when it felt like situations were being even more twisted and confused and pressurized. When contemplating this, my thoughts turned to Jesus. Were there times in His life when He faced a multitude of conflicting situations, all clamoring for His attention? And if so, how did He handle it? The day that came to mind was the day He fed the 5,000 and walked on water. Exactly the passages we've been looking at in our John series. But looking at Mark's account of the same stories, we see a wider context as to what was happening in the time of Jesus' life at that moment. Just before these events, Mark records that Jesus' relation, John the Baptist, had been brutally murdered by Herod. This would have been an emotional hammer blow for Jesus. Not only was John his relation, but he was also his forerunner, perhaps the one who understood and appreciated who Jesus was more than anyone. It would have been also a grim reminder of what ultimately lay in store for him with the crucifixion. This grief and pain would have been very deep for Jesus. The other thing that happened at the same time was that the disciples had just returned after being sent out by Jesus. They had healed the sick, they had cast out demons and seen miraculous signs of God. They were buzzing with it all. But they were also shattered and running on adrenaline. Now, in the midst of his pain and grief, he had to deal with this tired but excited group of disciples. He knew they needed some time out. He said, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." And they set off in their boat. And it was then, at that moment, when they came into land, that they saw the huge crowd that was waiting for them. Now, my temptation would have been to keep on rowing across the lake. But Jesus didn't. He stopped, had compassion on them, and taught them many things. And by the end of the day, he would have been absolutely whacked. He hadn't had time to grieve the loss of John or speak to his exhausted disciples, and now he was faced with a crowd of 5,000 hungry men, plus women and children. And we think we've had challenging days. So how did he deal with the situation? He did what he felt he needed to do. He didn't abdicate his responsibilities, but rather he had compassion and fed the crowd. Even his disciples had a basket of food each for a takeaway at the end of the day. He did what was needed to be done, but as soon as he could, he literally headed to the hills. Literally, he went. Immediately after everyone had eaten and the leftovers had been picked up, he made his disciples to get into the boat and he dismissed the crowd. Then he went up to the mountain to pray. He knew he needed to be alone with his Father, but he had to fight for it. At this point, he had to push people away to take care of his own needs. He wasn't being selfish. He needed that space in order to reset himself with his Father. For us, there needs to be the times when we just carry on and get things done, even though we don't feel like it or want to. We need to honour the responsibilities that we have and do what must be done. But I want to encourage all of us that there will be opportunities where we head to the hills for some alone time with God. It won't be easy. It won't just happen. Like Jesus, you may even have to send people away. But this time with God is priceless. It is the place where our peace and our calm will be restored. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." This invitation still stands, and I would encourage each one of us to take ourselves away to our mountain, to the place of quiet with God, and drink deeply of the rest he offers to every single